Get 5 coffins ready.
Hey everyone, welcome to my guide for Knox. Knox is a very unique mage in SMITE, but in Conquest at least, she often struggles to find a good role that suits her. In short, she doesn't have fast, reliable damage like what you want from a mage. Instead, she has fast, reliable CC, and over time can deal wicked high damage. This sees her currently in the support role, and every time Knox has been meta for the past 5 years or so, she's been a support, so it's safe to say that in Conquest at least, she's only a support. In other game modes, you can go crazy and build full mage. You'll have a blast since you're constantly fighting in those game modes, so Knox's playstyle makes more sense. But since I focus on Conquest, from here on in I'll be talking about her as a support. Build-wise, Knox doesn't do anything too crazy. She typically goes full defense and at least one damaging item. You want to be spamming your abilities constantly and need no fear of getting in the middle of fights to do so a good mix of cooldown reduction and defense goes a long way. Relics wise, as with most supports, you have plenty of options. Horrific Emblem is great on Knox for maximum oppression with your CC, giving you the option to use that slow to confirm your CC, or use the slow after your CC for a relentless chain of it. Second Relic is dependent on who you're against, but typically relics like Sunder or Bracer do well, items that really promote aggression and help your team follow up with that aggression. For shards, it's just Horn Shard. I mean, they gotta nerf that at some point, right? Right? Now for a pretty cool and unique passive. Knox gains 3% bonus magical power for every time she casts an ability, up to 4 times, represented by these candles. A candle will be blown out, and by extension have the power bonus removed, every time Knox takes damage from an enemy god. And it will count for every instance. Abilities that hit multiple times will take multiple passive stacks off, and a straight basic attack will take off a passive stack too. Luckily, Knox has some decent range, so it's not too hard to keep the passive up, but that said, it's not really something to sweat over. Just build the passive as fast as you can out of fights, and well, to be honest, you should be trying not to get hit anyways, since, dying is bad. So basically, just remember to build the passive back up after you lose it, and essentially you're maximizing the passive. Like I said earlier, Knox is very spammy anyways, so it's very easy to rebuild the passive after a fight. One ability she spams all the time is her first ability. Knox fires a projectile which will pass through minions and walls, damaging minions it passes through. Upon hitting a god, however, Knox will root cripple them for a whopping 2 seconds, and even better, the ability is unaffected by diminishing returns, which will become very important later. She deals damage over time to the affected target, and she's able to move around while they're rooted, but Knox will remain facing the opponent, but you can still move the camera, it's a little weird. This is obviously an excellent ability on all fronts. Good damage, great CC, plus it goes through both walls and minions for maximum versatility. It's an ability you want to spam, a lot like Kronos' first ability last time around. But that said, as the game gets later and later, you want to spam it less and less as it becomes much more vital to hit that one root that wins you the game. And that's another thing, one root, meaning that this can be body blocked by say the enemy support, or if you just plain miss it on your intended target and catch a tank instead. Getting the mechanics of this ability down is going to be very important. You need to get very good at hitting it to excel as Knox. Don't forget about niche use cases too, like using it to peel for your allies or yourself as well. It's not always about aggression. An equally important but much easier to land ability is Knox's second ability. Knox lays down an AoE, and while enemies are in this AoE, they are silenced. And this is also not affected by diminishing returns, so if they're in that AoE, they're silenced. Then after 2 seconds, the AoE detonates, stopping the silence but dealing pretty crazy damage. This ability is absolutely excellent in zone control since it gives a total do not pass area to enemies trying to chase. And against gods with predictable damage over time abilities, it makes them essentially a non-factor against a Knox. This also finally gives Knox a decent wave clear option as well, since blowing your root just to try and clear the wave isn't the best option, although if you're about to back, you can actually 2-1 the wave for some impressive damage. Also, the ability is literally instant. Press 2 and the area appears, that's it. This means that you can easily 2 on reaction to your opponent's moves, a lot like how you aim your first ability. So Knox is really about reading your opponent's moves and trying to stop them from executing them as much as she is about running up to people and just rooting or silencing them. This ability seems kinda useless though, huh? Just a silence that's never gonna last long or deal damage since people could just walk out of it. Well, yeah, that's why you use it in tandem with their first ability to keep them locked in there. This is Knox's iconic combo, and it's as effective as it is annoying. The threat of this combo leaves this sort of area of denial around Knox that you can't enter without getting 2-1'd. Of course, there are ways enemies can get around this. Naturally, you should try to 2 enemies as they approach you and your teammates, but sometimes what enemies will do is move predictably towards you, then, once you cast your 2, move quickly out of it to avoid being hit by your first ability's follow-up. And now your very important combo is down, and Knox becomes a sitting duck. From the Knox player's perspective, you need to aim your first ability very quickly and not just mindlessly press 2-1 in an enemy, since the one's travel time can make it hard to hit. As a follow-up to this, when your first ability, but especially your first and second abilities are both down, you need to just call it there and start to back up as Knox. Luckily, this is made easy with the third ability. Knox dashes forward, damaging any enemies she hits, and passes through all enemies. Colliding with an ally is where things get fun though. Upon colliding with an ally, Knox enters them. While in this state, Knox can take no actions and is completely immune to all CC and damage and cannot be targeted. She can stay within her ally for up to 8 seconds, after which time she explodes around them for the same damage her dash deals, but she can cancel this ability early to detonate whenever she chooses. Most of the time, this is an average dash. You use it when you need to escape, making sure not to dash into a teammate to stop your dash short by accident, and you can also use it when the coast is clear to get in range for your 2-1 combo. Never forget about using it to save yourself with a teammate for immunity though, or to do some cheeky combos with them. Since the dash lasts for a whopping 8 seconds, you can enter a teammate with a global or semi-global ultimate such as a Thor or a Thanatos, and you can ride along with them. This means that you can accompany them on ganks to ensure a kill, or accompany them in escapes to ensure yourself an escape. In most games though, you're going to want to use it in the more generic ways. Dash away when you need to escape, dash into allies when you're about to die. When you're doing the opposite, as in making the enemies die, don't forget that you can just dash straight through enemies and into an ally, then detonate immediately for some pretty crazy damage. This one is a lot more risky though, so be careful with that. Plus, as with all of the scenarios we've laid out when you enter an ally, remember that the cooldown of the ability won't start until you exit your teammate, so make sure to exit them at the earliest safe opportunity to get the ability back up, since it is your only way out. Luckily, Knox has great self-peel with her first and second ability already, but it gets even better with her ultimate. Knox becomes CC immune and winds up, then fires out a projectile which will go through minions that stop on walls and gods. Upon hitting a wall or god, the projectile explodes in an AoE, dealing the same damage to any enemies whether they got hit by the original projectile or the AoE. Any enemy damaged now takes damage over time, and while they have the damage over time applied to them, they will deal a flat 40% reduced damage to all enemies, even minions. This is a god tier ability, but it's one you've got to make count. Luckily, there's plenty of great situations to use it in, probably more than you think. First and foremost, it goes far, so snipes with this ability are very much possible, so it can be perfect to finish off enemies with. That's only every once in a while though. For the most part, you want to check out this ability directly into teamfights, and into those early and mid-game skirmishes as well. Not only because the damage it deals is decent, but that damage reduction is enormous. It makes literally any damage dealer in the game completely worthless, so throwing this ability into the teamfight after your main 2-1 combo has been expended is literally never a bad thing. The number one thing you want to watch out for is only hitting an enemy tank, or even worse, nobody at all. Obviously, using this ability on a tank is completely useless most of the time, other than when getting clutch damage reduction to save a teammate. You want to throw this ability onto enemy mages, assassins, but especially hunters in every single fight and completely neuter them. Also, as I mentioned, it may not hit at all since the enemy backline can just use their movement abilities to completely avoid it, or simply dodge out of the way if you use it too far away. So stay on your toes and try to keep track of who can easily avoid the ability. Keep in mind though that their relics are non-factor here. Neither beads nor ages can cleanse that damage over time, meaning they're always going to be stuck with that annoying damage reduction so long as you hit them. Of course though, this is an ability you want to use relatively early in the teamfight to make sure you're able to stop the enemy backline from using their key abilities and combos before they come out by applying this damage reduction, or at the very least, making it much less effective for them. But don't do it so early that the enemy team just waits out the damage reduction and then re-engages. It's why I said at the start that you need to find a time between when the fight is already going, but before the most important combos and abilities get thrown out. And finally, of course, it's great self-peel, both with the CC immunity and damage reduction. So if you or a teammate is being chased down, don't forget about that damage reduction in clutch situations like this as well. We've pretty much already seen them all, but let's recap Knox's combos. 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. When you're feeling spicy, 2, 1, 3. 3 into a teammate if you can and cancel out of it, 2, 1, ult. For ability leveling, you want your 2 at level 1, and don't forget to spam it while in the fountain to build up your passive. Then your 1 at level 2, and your 3 at level 3. From there you max your 2, then your 1, then your 3, leveling the ult whenever you can. So you should probably understand the strengths of Knox at this point. Crazy hard CC which is spammable, and decent damage on top of that. The reason why it doesn't really work in the mid lane in Conquest is simply because it's just a gamble on whether or not you'll be able to pull off that big 2-1 combo on an important target and live to tell the tale. Going support allows you to 2-1 enemies over and over again, and frankly just win your team the game with absurd levels of CC that she can provide. At the end of the day though, she'll always be less tanky than a proper Guardian support, so if you get significantly behind with Knox support, you may as well just have a sponge in the support role. Stay even or god forbid 2-1 an enemy in the early game and kill them to get ahead, and Knox can be damn near unstoppable with her relentless barrage of CC and damage reduction ultimate, all stacking on top of each other to make the enemy feel like they didn't even want to load in the first place. That's all I have on Knox for now. Thanks for watching.